Good morning, beloved. Before the noise rises, before your phone lights up, before you remember everything you're behind on, pause. Right here, right now. Let this be sacred. Take a slow breath. Let it stretch all the way down to where the worry hides. Inhale grace. Exhale the pressure to prove anything. You woke up this morning not by accident, but by divine intention. This breath, it isn't just oxygen, it's a whisper from heaven that says, I'm not finished with you yet. Before you run toward deadlines, demands, or expectations, come back to center. Come back to presence. You don't have to earn today. You just have to receive it. You don't need the world to validate your worth. God already called you worthy when He gave you breath. So today, don't begin with striving. Begin with surrender. Let your first breath be a prayer, your first thought be trust, and your first step be peace. That's where real strength begins. Long before your phone lights up. Long before the weight of your calendar begins to pull you in every direction. Long before the voices of comparison, pressure, and performance get the chance to speak, something deeper stirs. Your breath. Quiet, steady, unnoticed by most. But in God's presence, it is not just a biological rhythm, it is an invitation. A sacred reminder that before anything else defines your direction, you were made to be led. Not by pressure. Not by fear. But by His voice. The very first breath you take each morning isn't a small thing. It is holy. It is the signpost that you've been kept through the night. That grace didn't run out while you slept. That heaven has more for you today. But how often do we miss it? We wake up already in motion. Already rehearsing our to-do list. Already scrolling through other people's lives, absorbing silent pressure to measure up. Already behind. But what if that first inhale could become more than a reflex? What if it could be a moment of sacred alignment? A whisper to your soul that says, pause. Remember who you are. And more importantly, who you are. This is not a poetic metaphor. It's a spiritual reality. The breath in your lungs is the evidence of a God who still sees purpose in your story. Before your fingers type one word. Before your feet cross one room, you are being invited, not into a race, but into a relationship. The culture around you will tell you to hustle. To move faster. To optimize every second. But heaven invites you to begin slower. To wake up with wonder. To acknowledge that your soul has a direction before your day has a plan. And that direction begins with surrender. You don't need to earn your way into peace. You just need to let peace meet you where you are, in your bed, with morning breath, tangled hair, unfinished prayers, and all. That's where He meets you. That's where He leads you. It only takes one breath. One moment to say, God, lead me before the world does. Anchor my mind before the headlines do. Shape my heart before opinions try to. If you begin with alignment, you walk through the rest of your day not as someone who's trying to survive, but as someone who knows they are sent. There is power in beginning with presence. Power in honoring the sacred pause. Power in choosing not to be led by noise but by grace. So tomorrow morning, before the emails, before the chaos, before the coffee, let your first breath be a prayer. God, this breath is yours. Lead me. Prayer was never meant to be a performance. It was never about saying all the right things in the right order with the perfect amount of conviction. It was never about eloquence, polish, or religious posture. Prayer, in its rawest form, is simply presence. It is the soul reaching out before the heart has the words. It is showing up messy, unsure, scattered, and still believing that God leans in when you do. Sometimes, the most honest prayer is a sigh. A breath. A tear that falls before your feet hit the floor. Sometimes it's a whispered, God, I don't even know what I need today. And that is more than enough. Because He is not moved by performance, He is moved by proximity. He is not impressed by your perfection, He is drawn to your honesty. Your first prayer in the morning doesn't have to be a polished speech. It can be the simplest, most broken sentence. It can sound like, "I'm here, Lord." It can sound like silence filled with trust. It can even sound like questions you're afraid to ask out loud. We've been conditioned to think that starting the day with God means having a journal open, coffee poured, and the sun perfectly rising outside your window. But sometimes, starting with God means meeting Him in the middle of the chaos. In the still dark room with your alarm blaring. In the bathroom, as you splash water on your face. In the car on your commute, as your mind spins with everything ahead of you. That's where true prayers live. That's where God meets you. He isn't asking for poetry. He's asking for presence. He's not impressed when we recite scripture if we've forgotten how to be honest. He's not waiting for the flawless prayer. He's waiting for the real one. When your mind is cluttered and your heart is exhausted, you don't have to fake strength. You don't have to pretend you have it all together. You don't even need a full sentence. Just one word whispered in faith is a prayer that reaches heaven. Maybe today all you can say is, "Help." That's enough. Maybe all you can say is, "Stay with me." That's enough. God is not grading your grammar. He is gathering your soul. There is a kind of intimacy in honest prayer that perfect words can't touch. There's a nearness that comes when you stop trying to be impressive and start choosing to be open. The most powerful prayers are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are simply the most surrendered. This is your invitation to stop performing and start breathing. To stop trying to impress God and start trusting that He already sees, already knows, and already loves you right where you are. So tomorrow morning, or even right now, let your first prayer be real. Let it be clumsy if it needs to. Let it be quiet. Let it be interrupted by distractions. Let it be fully yours. There is no wrong way to begin with God when you begin with honesty. There is no missed moment when you offer what's true. He doesn't need your polished edges. He wants your real self. The you behind the mask. The you who is tired but still showing up. The you who wonders if He still listens. He does. And He's listening now. So begin, not with pressure to perform, but with permission to be. Begin with what you have, not what you wish you could offer. Begin with a breath and a whisper. That's prayer. That's enough. The way you begin your morning quietly shapes how you carry everything else. Before the noise rises, before your to-do list gains momentum, there is a choice. Not about productivity, but about perspective. Most people begin their days by asking, "What do I have to do today?" But the deeper question, the one that anchors your soul, is this: who am I becoming today if I walk with God? When your morning starts with criticism, whether from your own thoughts or someone else's words, you tend to shrink. You play small. You enter rooms, second-guessing your voice. When your first thoughts are rooted in comparison, you hustle for validation. You scroll through other people's lives trying to match their image, forgetting that you were never created to be a copy. But when you start with God's truth, when your identity is defined not by culture or mistakes or metrics, but by who He says you are, everything shifts. Starting with God isn't just a spiritual habit, it's a lens. It determines what you magnify and what you minimize. You begin to see the interruptions not as irritations but invitations. You become less reactive and more rooted. You notice beauty in places you used to rush by. Your identity stops swinging with people's opinions and starts settling into God's unchanging voice. Most of us wake up already behind, already anxious, already trying to keep up. But what if the day didn't have the first word? What if the voice that shaped your morning wasn't the one in your email or on your news feed, but the one who shaped the stars? When you let the world define your day, you will always feel like you're catching up. But when you let God define it, you begin from a place of victory, not deficiency. From belovedness, not burnout. God doesn't ask you to have all the answers before you begin. He simply invites you to walk with Him. The destination will sort itself out. What matters most is the direction of your heart. And when your heart is turned toward Him, your steps begin to follow. So, rather than starting with, what do I have to do today? What if you paused and asked, who do I want to become today in God's presence? That question realigns everything. It makes the meeting not just about performance, but about presence. It makes the chore not just about getting things done, but about doing them with love. It makes your interactions more tender, your silence more sacred, and your work more worshipful. It's not about pretending the day won't be hard. It's about deciding it won't define you. Your day may bring challenges, but they are not the narrator of your story. God is. And He says you are chosen, redeemed, called, and equipped. He says you are not too late, too broken, or too far gone. He says you are held. And if you begin your day grounded in that truth, you will walk differently. Not as someone scrambling to prove their worth, but as someone who already knows they are loved. So take a moment. Let God speak before the world does. Let Him remind you of who you are, so the rest of the day doesn't have the power to tell you otherwise. Start not with pressure, but with purpose. Not with a task list, but with trust. Because the most important thing you do today may not be something you check off. It may simply be the way you carried yourself through it, grounded, surrendered, and aware that you are walking with God the whole way. Before you open your inbox, before the headlines shout their urgency, before the demands of others begin to shape your identity, there is a sacred invitation waiting for you. It's not loud. It doesn't beg for your attention. It whispers. It waits in stillness. And in a world that constantly asks for more, this moment offers something different, a quiet return to what matters most. This is your 5-minute soul check-in. It doesn't require a schedule. It doesn't require perfection. Just presence. Wake up, sit still, and breathe. Put your hand over your heart, not out of ritual, but to remember that you are still here. That God has chosen to wake you up again. That breath in your chest isn't random, it's a reminder. A signal that your life is still being written, still held, still precious. As you sit in the stillness, ask yourself gently, without judgment, what's the loudest voice in me right now? Is it fear? Is it a shame? Is it the ache of comparison? Or is it faith, even if it's the size of a whisper? Whatever rises to the surface, you don't have to fix it. You just have to name it. Truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always freeing. There is so much noise trying to get to you before God does. That's why this space matters. Because before the world names you unworthy, you need to hear again that you are beloved. Before you run toward the chaos, you need a still place to remember your calling. Before judgment tries to label you, you need to rest in the truth that grace has already claimed you. Speak this aloud, not as a performance, but as a permission. God, I give you my first breath today. Be my anchor. Let those words become the soil you plant your thoughts in. Let them shape how you respond when the schedule fills up, when the interruptions come, when the disappointment hits. Let them realign your heart with heaven's pace. You were not created to be driven by notifications or controlled by timelines. You were not made to live reactive, always behind, always hustling. You were created for communion. For walking in step with a God who knows the full map, even when you can't see the next turn. This check-in is not about doing it right, it's about returning to the relationship. Let this 5-minute practice become your daily reset. Your inner compass. A way to remind yourself, I don't need all the answers to be anchored. I just need to be aligned. And alignment doesn't come from more effort, it comes from surrender. From choosing to hear the voice of love before the voices of pressure. You might be surprised by what happens when you start here. Your reactions slow down. Your breathing deepens. Your inner chaos loses its grip. You begin to move from a place of rootedness, not rushing. You begin to lead your day instead of being led by it. And maybe that becomes the greatest miracle of all, not a perfect day, but a grounded soul. So tomorrow, and every day after, begin here. Before you open your calendar. Before you speak. Before you scroll. Check in with your soul. Name what's loud. Invite God to be louder. Place your hand on your heart and say again, God, I give you my first breath today. Be my anchor. Let that be your first alignment, not to pressure, but to presence. Not to noise, but to truth. Sometimes the most powerful changes in your life don't start with a breakthrough. They start with a space. A small, intentional space that reminds your soul what matters most. You don't need a mountain, you don't need hours of silence. You just need a corner. A chair. A moment. A choice to start differently. To start with God. In a world that pulls you in every direction from the moment you wake up, having a sacred space set aside isn't about ritual, it's about remembering. It's about reminding your heart that before the world tells you who you are, you've already been spoken for. Creating what we call a first five corner isn't about aesthetics or perfection. It's not about having the ideal morning light or a Pinterest-worthy setup. It's about building a rhythm that centers your day on what matters, presence, not performance. Your first five corner could be anything. A chair in the corner of your bedroom. A small table in the living room with a candle and a worn-out Bible. A journal placed beside your coffee pot. A blanket by the window. What matters is not the setup, it's the surrender that happens there. It's the posture of your soul when you choose to start with God instead of starting in reaction. The world doesn't pause when you wake up. It races forward, full of news, noise, and notifications. And if you're not careful, you begin your day as a responder rather than a receiver. You begin already behind, already comparing, already consumed. But when you choose to enter that small space, when you sit down, take a breath, and say, God, I'm here, something shifts. The noise loses its grip. The pressure weakens. Your heart exhales. 5 minutes may not sound like much, but it can reroute your entire emotional trajectory. It's not the length of time that changes you, it's the intention. When you give God your first, even if it's brief, you're aligning your spirit with His presence. You're declaring that He gets to be the first voice you hear. The first truth you absorb. The first anchor you hold. That space becomes sacred not because of where it is, but because of what happens there. It becomes holy ground because it's where your soul meets its creator before it meets the chaos. It's where you learn to breathe before you build, where you receive before you respond. And slowly, day by day, it becomes not just a place of refuge, but a place of transformation. So make the space. Set the tone. Light a candle. Open a journal. Whisper a prayer. Let your first five corner be the reminder that even in the rush, you can choose rest. Even in the demands, you can choose depth. Even in the overwhelm, you can choose to begin with peace. And when the day pulls at you, when the texts flood in, when the pressure builds, when the plans unravel, you'll remember where you started. You'll remember that the first voice you listened to wasn't your own anxiety or someone else's opinion. It was God's. And that makes all the difference. Don't underestimate what 5 minutes in His presence can do. It might not change your schedule, but it will change how you walk through it. It might not remove the storm, but it will steady you in the middle of it. Begin there. Build from there. Let your first five corner be the quiet place that reminds you, every single day, that you are led, you are loved, and you are never alone. Lord, this morning, before my hands reach for a screen, before my feet hit the floor, before I let the day decide who I am, I come to you. Quiet. Bare. Needing nothing more than your presence. Let my first breath today be more than survival. Let it be surrender. Not a gasp for control, but an exhale of trust. As the world begins to pull at me with its demands, worries, distractions, and expectations, I choose instead to begin with you. You are not the afterthought of my schedule. You are the origin of my peace. Be the first voice I hear, the first name I call, the first presence I feel. Before my mind starts racing through the unfinished lists and unspoken fears, still my soul. Quiet the noise before it gains momentum. Replace the storm within me with the stillness of your spirit. Anchor me before anxiety has a chance to script my day. Let my first thought not be fear, but truth. Not panic, but promise. Not lack, but love. Teach me, Lord, that what I carry into this day isn't the weight of proving, but the wonder of being held by you. May I move slower, not because I am lazy, but because I am led. Let your voice be the compass that guides me, the melody that steadies me, the reminder that I am not alone. I lay down every performance, every pressure. Every piece of me believes I have to earn my place. I give you the exhaustion I hide, the doubts I silence, the striving that drains me. I give you the relationships I'm afraid to lose, the choices I don't yet know how to make, the grief I pretend I've already healed from. I offer them not with polished words, but with open hands. I trust you with what I can't fix. I trust you with what I don't understand. This breath, this body, this day, it's all yours. Use it to bring peace where there is chaos, light where there is confusion, grace where there is shame. Let my conversations carry compassion. Let my pauses become prayer. Let my eyes see what you see and my steps follow where you lead. Let every moment today echo that I belong to you. When I am tempted to rush ahead, slow me with your presence. When I feel invisible, remind me I am known. When I want to shut down, awaken hope within me again. When fear rises, help me breathe deeper. Not because I have it all figured out, but because I know who walks beside me. I do not ask for perfection. I ask for alignment. I do not ask to escape the hard things. I ask for the courage to meet them, hand in hand with you. I do not ask to be the strongest. I ask to remember where my strength comes from. May peace guard my heart like armor. May grace be the rhythm of my responses. May trust be my posture and worship be my breath. Let this first breath not only start my day, let it shape it. Let it be a quiet rebellion against the chaos. A whispered declaration that I am anchored. I am held. I am loved. Let it be the beginning of a day not ruled by pressure, but by purpose. Not by reaction, but by reverence. Let this breath be my yes to you. So here I am, Lord. Awake, available, and aware that you are already near. I give you the day before it begins. I give myself before I perform. My first breath belongs to you. Not just today, but every day. And that, right here in this stillness, is more than enough. Amen. She used to wake up already overwhelmed, scrolling through her phone, mentally sorting through unfinished tasks, and bracing herself for a day that often felt more like a battlefield than a blessing. She didn't realize how much the first 5 minutes shaped everything that followed. Her mornings were rushed, reactive, and filled with the weight of having to prove her worth before breakfast. But something shifted when she created sacred space, a chair in the corner, a journal, 5 quiet minutes with God. It didn't erase her struggles, but it redefined her strength. No longer did she measure her day by productivity but by presence. Her first breath became her first surrender. Her first thought became a grounding truth. And her first prayer, even if whispered through tears, became her anchor. Now, when fear creeps in or the pressure to perform rises, she returns to that rhythm. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, available to the God who meets her in silence and stays through the storm. In today's chaotic world, many of us feel like we're behind before we even begin. But the truth is, how we start our day matters. It shapes our thoughts, our posture, and our pace. Begin not with your phone, but with your Father. Don't let pressure speak louder than peace. Create a space, even just 5 minutes, to check in with your soul, breathe deeply, and align with God's truth. Let your first breath be a prayer, not a panic. Because when you begin with God, you don't just carry peace, you become it. In the end, the lesson is simple yet life-changing. How you begin matters. Not because the first few minutes of your day must be productive, but because they determine the posture of your heart. When you give God your first breath, your first thought, your first space, you begin from a place of alignment, not anxiety. You stop racing against time and start walking with purpose. This shift doesn't require perfection. It requires intention. 5 minutes of stillness. One honest prayer. A sacred pause before the pressure builds. These small choices recalibrate your soul. They remind you that your identity is not earned throughout the day, it's received the moment you wake up, loved and held by a God who is already near. In a culture obsessed with doing more and going faster, choosing to begin with God is a quiet rebellion. It's how you resist the noise and reclaim your peace. It's how you move from reactive to rooted, from scattered to steady. So let this be the practice that grounds you, the rhythm that centers you, to begin not with hustle, but with hope. Not with striving, but with surrender. That's where the real transformation begins, not just in your day, but in your life.